Several times when I went to the movie theaters, we saw a trailer for this movie, but it never came out when it was supposed to in our theaters. And the only way I was going to see it is if it came out on when it came out on DVD, and I got to see it just last week. Just last Friday, I got a free Redbox, and so I used it on Child 44, and I definitely wasn't disappointed. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, but I still really liked it. So Child 44, I believe, is an adaptation to a novel, and this movie is set in Russia in the 1950s. In Child 44, our main character is played by Tom Hardy, and he plays not a KGB agent, but he's one of those people that is responsible for investigating traitors, taking them out and interrogating them and trying to figure out more traitors to the country. Well, two things happen that really change his life. For one, they discover the body of a child who is Tom Hardy's godchild. The child was definitely murdered on these train tracks, but because the Russian government wants to make Russia a utopia, they say there's no murder in paradise, and so that means it can't be murder. So it's being covered up. And on that same note, someone named Tom Hardy's wife as a traitor. So now he has to deal with the implications that she's a traitor, and either he disowns her and then he's fine and then she's claimed a traitor, or he stays with her and gets demoted along with her. And then yet again another body is found very similar to his godson, and so with nothing else to lose, Tom Hardy goes and tries to investigate if all these child murders are indeed a serial killer that is killing these children by the train tracks, while members of his former job are trying to stop him because there can't be murder in paradise. Now, the film is nowhere near as epic or dramatic or as intense as the trailers made it out to be. With that said, it was still very interesting and I was engaged throughout. Now, ultimately, one of the main goals of the film is finding out this killer, and it's got this serial killer thriller aspect, this mystery to the whole film. But the real focus of this movie feels like the dystopia that 1950s Russia was in. Like I said, the main focus of the movie really is this dystopia and how they're getting in the way of the murder and how they're trying to make it out like everything is fine, and how the citizens really fear to speak out their opinions because if they have different opinions, they get taken away and claimed as traitors. And so I think therein lies the main point to the movie, is this paranoia, this almost Crucible-like story. But with that said, the movie doesn't really go in too deep with that element. It's definitely the main focus, but they still wanted to try to keep a good chunk of the focus on the thriller, obviously. And so you don't get a lot of that paranoia, well, as much as you would want from a good drama like this. Though there are really thick Russian accents throughout, I think all the actors did a really good job with the film. Tom Hardy, Naomi Rapace, is that how I pronounce it? It's R-A-P-A-C-E. Gary Oldman, and even Jason Clarke, who's only in it for like 2 or 3 scenes, all did a really good job. Joel Kinnaman was good too, and if you remember the remake of RoboCop, he was RoboCop in that movie. This is a very dark, very gritty, almost depressing movie, but it's one that I really enjoyed and I really think could have been even better. There's one action sequence I was disappointed with. It could have been way better, and it is an intense action scene, but it's so confusing by the way the shaky cam happens as well as the cuts that I couldn't quite tell what was going on. Sure, it happens in a very clustered train car with a bunch of people, but it's really hard to tell what happened, at least for me it was. But the last fight sequence, I think that was pretty epic. This is another movie that's really hard to describe without giving too much away with the story. It's a pretty good drama, it is a fairly decent thriller, and it's a really fairly good paranoia piece about the 1950s in Russia, a time that we don't even know the true truth about because there's a lot of propaganda. It's almost great at all of these things, but never excels to greatness or epicness, which the trailer made it look like it could be. So in the end, I'm going to give Child 44 3.5 stars. It is better than what other people say, but it's not as great as I hoped it was. So it's somewhere in the middle. So have you seen Child 44? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If you haven't, well, what is your favorite dystopia movie? Like science fiction dystopia, probably. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.